Welcome back to part 3 of ServicePortal 101. In this video, we're going to take what we've looked at in the past couple videos and expand upon that. So now we're going to go into the page editor, we're going to look at some existing pages, we're going to see the layout that's used with Bootstrap and how that's applied to the ServicePortal. We're also going to navigate and see all the different widgets that come out of the box. We're going to see my instance, which is based on Madrid. So if your instance is a different version, the widgets that you have may differ slightly. Also, depending on what modules you have installed, you may see different widgets. We're also going to create a page from scratch and just show how to put widgets on a page and really just start to manipulate what's already there within the system that you have. If you haven't already done so, you may want to go to developer.servicenow.com. And from there, you can request a developer instance to have a playground or a sandbox to experiment with. And this applies to the ServicePortal as well as any of the other products within ServiceNow. So with that, let's jump into the instance. Okay, so now I'm in my instance. And just real quick, you'll notice that it looks a little different than the previous couple videos. That's because I've upgraded my instance. This is now on Madrid. And also, we've upgraded our logo and colors for branding purposes, and so it's just been themed to look like that. Other than that, everything that you have in your instance, regardless of the version, as long as it's after Helsinki, you'll be able to follow along and do all the work that we're doing in here. So the purpose of this is to show you how you can take an existing portal and modify the widgets, rearrange things, and then we're going to create a new page from scratch. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time in the designer here. We looked at the branding editor in the last video and talked about how to take an existing portal and apply themes and colors to it. But we're going to spend time in the designer in this one, and that's where we can bring up an existing page and modify it. We can also create new pages from there. Now, as you look at this video, you're going to gain some information, but it's also worth noting I created another video called My Assets. So if you look at this video, it's on my YouTube channel. This also walks you through creating a new page from scratch called My Assets, which mimics the My Assets page that exists in the ServiceNow instance. So if you go into ServiceNow and you go to self-service and you just go to My Assets, you'll see that this page exists within the ServiceNow instance, but not as a portal page. And so that video that I created will show you how to recreate that as a portal page. So that's another example that'll help get you a little further down the path. So let's jump into the designer. And when I bring this up, it shows me all the pages that are available in my instance. And I could select any one of these, bring it up, see how it's laid out, make modifications to it, save it back, make copies of it. I can also create a new page from here if I want to. And we'll do that shortly. But first we're going to look at an existing page called Index, which will be the landing page for the existing service portal. Now when I bring this up, this is the editor that we have. Everything is drag and drop here, and we'll walk through some of that. Notice that I also have the ability to preview, and when I preview, I can look at it on a desktop monitor view, from a tablet mode, or from a mobile device. And you'll notice how the page changes and it's responsive based on the device that I'm previewing it on. So you can see what it's going to look on a mobile device as you're designing your pages and make sure that the design is responsive. You're hiding certain parts and elements of the page that don't need to be displayed on smaller devices. It's worth noting also that this is based on Bootstrap. If you don't understand Bootstrap, I suggest you go and do a little reading on it. You don't have to be an expert on it. We've put a lot of those design elements already into the designer, so you don't really have to think about a lot of that. But if you want to get a little bit more advanced, it'll certainly help you understand the grid layout. For those of you that haven't taken that time to read yet, I'll just explain very briefly that Bootstrap is a grid system. It's based on 12 columns, and those 12 columns are what allow you to align content. And you'll see as we create a new page how we can use the containers to lay out those columns and we can even have nested containers if we want to to really lay out the page and have it look nice and pleasing to the eye. Now you notice here, for example, I've got 4 different icon link widgets. And so if we think about a grid of 12 columns across, there's 4 different columns there. So each one of those columns, or excuse me, each one of these widgets is 3 columns wide. 3, 6, 9, 12. And that gives me my 12 column width layout that Bootstrap dictates that we have. If you don't understand that, again, go look a little bit about on Bootstrap. There's plenty of videos and primers out there, and it's not the intent of this video, but hopefully that all makes sense. So as we look at this page, you'll notice as I move my mouse, different things get highlighted. So right now I'm looking at the homepage search widget. That's what this is here. Anytime you hover over a widget, I can delete the widget or I can edit what's there. Come down here and I do the same thing. You notice the icon link widget, and if I click the edit button, now I get to the properties page where I can start to type in some of the configuration items around that. So this particular one we call the walk-up check-in. There's the title, there's the short description, the default color we selected, and the icon that's going to show up. So it's relatively easy to modify these widgets that we include out of the box, or ones that you may find out on Share or on the ServiceNow store or elsewhere. Some of these are very purpose driven. So this one is current status. So it's going to give you current status, but it's not going to allow you to have a lot of configuration items because it is purpose built for specific needs and not configurable, for example, for a variable list of information. You'll see other ones, such as simple list. I'll call this more of a generic widget because it allows me, when I go to configure it, I can tell it the information I want to display. Now that one happens to be my open incidents, but notice that from the table I could select down and select any table that I have access to in ServiceNow. So this could be a list of security incidents or HR cases or whatever it might be. So this is more of a all-encompassing or generic widget that allows me to display data from any table within ServiceNow that I have access to. All right, so let's go ahead and close that one. We'll close the properties page for the simple list widget. As I look at this, each one of these widgets are laid out in a container. And you'll notice that the blue dotted line, as I move here, that's a container that holds those widgets. Now this blue dotted line, you'll notice that it's got stacked widgets. There's one here at the top. There's another one in the center for knowledge news. There's one down here for top rated articles. So a container can have one or more widgets. It actually doesn't have to have any widgets by design, but that's where you place your widgets, is in these containers. So as we go to create the new page, you'll see how we lay that out. But what I want to show you in this first part is that if I want to rearrange how these widgets are laid out, I can click and hold and drag this widget over here, and now I've just changed the design of this page. If I go to preview, you'll see that now I've got these stacked. I can easily move that back. It's a drag and drop operation, so there's nothing really fancy here that I'm showing you other than it is drag and drop, and the widgets will drop or land on an existing container. So modifying existing pages is very easy to change the layout. If I want to add something, I could come in here and let's say I want to add a button widget. I can click that, drag it where I want it, and then it adds to that particular part of the page. Now from there, obviously I need to configure this, so I'd go into the configuration page, put in some information to configure that, and now I've got that new widget added to my page. So drag and drop throughout. It's very easy to do. There's nothing difficult that's required to do this. All right, so I've went ahead and closed that page that I had open, and let's design a page from scratch. So I'm back at the designer here, and I want to launch that, and it's going to say, do I want to modify a page that exists, or do I want to create a new page? And I'm going to go ahead and create one. We're going to call it My New Page and submit. It'll create that page for us. And now we're presented with a blank layout. So remember the grid system that we talked about. That is the layout section here on the left-hand side. So within this layout section, you'll see graphically what we're looking at. And everything starts with a container. So I need to have a container first. And when I have that container, you'll see that I already had one on the page. I can create many of those. So now I've got 3 containers, and the containers will contain these layouts. So the first container, maybe I want to be 12 columns wide. The next one I want to be 3 columns, 6 columns, and 3 columns. And the bottom one I want to be 2 columns across, so giving me 6 different sections to put widgets in. You can change this however you would like. Now these are the default ones, but I could come in and modify this, and instead of a 363, I could make this a 255, right? So it's very easy to modify that. As long as the columns add up to 12 across, you're in good shape. Now once I have these different sections, that's where I come over to my widgets, and there's lots of these, so you notice I didn't scroll down. I just went ahead and started to type because there are many widgets across here that if you scroll down, it's easy to get lost. So I'm going to go ahead and type in icon, and I know the icon link is the widget that I want. And now I can start to edit that, and it's going to say what type of data is this. In this case, I'm going to say it's going to link to a URL. We'll link it to Google. We'll say the page title, just call it Google. Go to Google to search. We can change colors here if we want. You can change Bootstrap class names. We won't get into that in this video. If you understand Bootstrap classes, you could override the default Bootstrap class here. Now again, this, I think I mentioned this in one of the other videos. All of these fonts here, there's these graphics, these are all from Font Awesome. So I can select one of these, whatever one makes sense to me, and then I'll just go ahead and save that. And so now I have a new link, and if I preview that, you'll see what my page looks like. Now you notice it looks different. Those containers that I had above it, those were empty, so they just collapsed. There's nothing to be displayed. So my icon shows here at the top, and now of course I could click that and go to the link, whatever it is I'm having it go towards. Let's go ahead and I'll add another. I'm going to look for the homepage search, which we'll put here at the top. This is very common that you've seen across ServiceNow on all of our default portals. Well, if I could type a little better. Go ahead and save that. And now I've just modified that, and again, we'll just look at the preview real quick. So it's very easy to create these pages, as you can see. We're creating this from scratch. Now, as you start to develop these, you're going to want to be very familiar with what widgets are available to you on the left-hand side. And this is where you're probably going to spend a lot of time looking at existing pages. So you can bring up any page here. If you click Pages at the top, I could go to existing pages, select that, and it'll bring it up in the editor. And look at what widgets are being used on pages that are already in the system. So if you see a widget that's on a page and you want to know how they do that, or how that data is gathered, or what widget's being used to get that information, you can go to the page, bring it up in the editor, look at the widget by hovering over it, and it'll tell you the name of the widget. And then all you do is when you're creating your page, go to the widgets and then type in the name of that widget, and you can drag that onto your form. So one other thing that I'll talk about here is, notice across the top I see container, row, column. So right now what's highlighted is a column, but I can select the row that that column is part of, and you notice the highlighting changes, or I can select the container. And the reason that's important is you start to get into some of the more advanced layouts, you're going to want to be able to make sure that you're modifying the correct element. So let's start out here. If I go to my homepage search, I'm in a container, in a row, in a column, on the specific widget, which is my homepage search. And I can come in and modify that if I want to, right? So I can go in and change that by selecting the pencil icon here or here. The pencil icon here applies to whatever's selected here. So if I want to modify the layout for that column, I can select the column, and you'll notice my properties page changes. So I won't go into the detail here, but this is where you start to get a little deeper into Bootstrap and determining when does this disappear. So maybe you have a graphic that looks great on a desktop, but you don't want it to display on a mobile phone. So you can start to say, when does this display and under what conditions? And that's when we get into the responsive page design. If I come back here to container, of course, now I'm editing the container. I can do things like a background, change the background color, upload an image, whatever it might be. I can give it an alternative bootstrap, change the class of the CSS and so forth. So be aware of the context that you're editing. So it's not just editing the widgets themselves, but also the columns, rows, and containers. So if I wanted to delete this container here, I could select the container, or if I was accidentally clicked here maybe on a column, I could go to the container there, tell it to delete that. Yes, I want to permanently delete that, and it removes that from my page. So hopefully that was a good introduction for you into how to easily modify existing pages. You can change the properties, you can change the colors, the fonts, the text, and you can also create new pages relatively easily. So as I close out this video, one additional thing that I'll encourage you to do is, if you do have a sandbox that you can play in, or even better, if you have an instance on our developer.servicenow.com site, you'll have access to a number of different portals. And so if you come into your instance and you go to portals, you'll see a list of those, and hopefully you'll have a fair amount of these. Some of these are just in my demo system as well. But for example, if I want to go see how the timesheet portal was built, I can select that, and for any portal you can click try it. It'll take you to that portal, and you can see what that looks like in real time. And so you'll notice here that I have some very purpose-built widgets all around tracking time within ServiceNow. I can come back out here and look at my other portals that I have. There's one for the walk-up experience, and if I want to try that, you'll notice again it looks, whoops, let me try one that I have access to. I'm logged in as a wrong user. The business planning portal. And again, these are using some very specific widgets that are purpose-built, but the good thing is a lot of these are reusable for other capabilities as well. So hopefully that is a good introduction on creating pages for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, leave comments, and thanks for watching.